I'm gonna make excuse me, I'm gonna make a video here to help you out with your graphing calculators, just to get you some more exposure and help you out just graphing lines and with the statistics stuff. While Michaela is in the background, or McKenna, sorry, is in the background making a lot of noise. That's okay. Let's see, what am I going to do? I've got graphing lines and curves, all this stuff I'm going to do. So let's start with the basics. When you graph, first of all, make sure your stat plots are off, these plots up on top. So the quickest way right here is just to go up to it. If it's on, like mine was activated, just hit enter and come back down. So this is just if you're going to graph basic lines, that's what you want. If you want your window to look like my window right here, where it's just a normal -10 to 10, -10 to 10 window, you want to go to zoom 6. So hit zoom and 6, which is the Z standard. So if you have some crazy window going on that someone previously had put in there, then it'll make it a standard window. So go to your y equals, make sure this is all cleared out. Somebody might have some, way down below here, they could have some equations put in there that you might not see, because there's 10 of them in there, I believe. So make sure those are cleared out. And just simply plug in an equation. Let's say you want to graph y equals x plus 6. This key right here, xt theta n, is your x key. So there's your x, and let's say plus 6. So now when I graph that, it should just show up. There it is. Well, there it is. There's my graph. Now I'm keeping the key sequence here for you versus the large screen because you can see it on your, like that. So that will help you if you need to pause it and see specifically what I typed in here, okay? So there's a line. Let's say the line, go back to it, was x plus something bigger, like, I don't know, 80. Okay, and I hit graph. Now, if you look at it, obviously, because my screen only goes from -10 to 10 and -10 to 10 for the y values, the x plus 80 is way up here, up at where it crosses at 80. So we're not going to see it here. So you need to zoom out, or just know, well, I know it crosses way up at 80. So if I just make my window, my height, let's say this x max, make that above 80. Oops, where am I going? That should help out. So maybe make it 100. And then now when I do this, all those tick marks are going to be squeezed in. So I'll just hit graph here and show you what I'm talking about. All those tick marks right there. Now this is really up to 100 up here. So there's 100 tick marks squeezed into this little space. So if you don't like that double line right there, if you really wanted to, you could just change that scale, the Y scale, instead of going by ones, make it go by 5s or 10s or something. I'll make it 10s and it'll look normal. So I'll make that a 10 and I hit graph. There's my equation. Now these are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 versus over here, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So that's why my line doesn't look like it's a 45-degree angle, even though it really is if these two scales were the same. So that's your basic line. I'm going to clear that out of there. I want to go back to my regular window for my future graphs. So this is my window right now. So I'm going to hit zoom 6 again. So that makes me back to a regular window. Okay, my Y is cleared out. Now let's get into some stat stuff, I think. Let me see what I have over here. Graphing lines, curves, standard window, intersection of two lines. Oh, I should probably do that. I want to intersect two lines here. I'm going to clear this out. So let's say I have y equals, let's say x plus 6 like I had before, and maybe y equals -2x plus 4. And I'll graph those together. Now, you can see the intersections right there, okay? If you don't like the way those, like one goes after the other, you want to both graph at the same time, it's a little quicker. Let's see if I remember how to do this. It's somewhere in the settings. It's in mode. Right here it says sequential and simultaneous. Now for future reference, I'm going to want this to be in degree mode. It doesn't affect what we're doing now, but generally speaking, you're going to want degree mode. And then simultaneous is where I want to graph these. This means when those two lines will be graphed at the same time, not one after the other. So maybe these might already be on there, but they should be. See how they're graphing at the same time now? This saves a little time, especially if you have more than two lines. It takes forever to graph like 6 lines at once. All right, so here we are. Now we have to find the intersection. Okay, if I hit trace, it gives me an ordered pair of where this cursor happens to be right there. And I can go to the left and get pretty close. It looks like my intersection's about negative 0.63, blah, 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 comma 5.4-ish. Okay, so that's about my intersection. But if you really want to get the true intersection, okay, like I'm gonna get off a little bit here. By the way, if you need to jump to the other line, you hit the arrow up or down. That jumps onto the other line. Then you can trace order pairs there. So it gives you all these different points on there as estimates. We're going to calculate the intersection. Okay, so if I go to this calculate above trace, so second calculate, intersect right there. Now it's above the trace key, so like we're going to use a calculate key that's in stats. That's different than this calculate key. So if you're talking about the graph itself, this is the calculate you want to do. So you want to calculate the intersection or the maximum or minimum. So I'm going to go down to 5. So either arrow down and hit enter or just hit the number 5. I'll just hit the number 5. And that gives me the intersection. Now, it asks me the intersection of what? Because you might have more than two lines on here. You might have 6 curves on here. So for generally speaking, as long as you only have 2 on there, you're just going to hit enter, enter, enter. So enter for the first curve. Second curve, yes. And then guess, enter. So I'll just hit enter 3 times. And there's my actual intersection. It looks like negative 2/3 would be the actual value. And then comma 5 1/3. You can pretty much assume that that's 1/3 and that's 2/3. So negative 2/3, comma 5 1/3 would be a good intersection. All right. So let's clear that out of there. I'm going to clear and clear and see what else I wanted to go through. Intersection, clearing lists. Okay. Let's go to statistic stuff now. Your lists are found under the stat key. Okay, so stat and then edit is where you're going to find these lists right here, like this list I have right here. So if I hit enter, I have 2 lists. A list for like these are like X's and these are Y's. And I can delete them real easily, which I want to do for our activity here. So I'm going to hit clear and then maybe go over to here. Maybe I have to go enter or down and then over and up to L2. I'm going to clear that one. And I hit enter there. Now I just cleared the lists out. So if there's a ton of numbers here, they're all gone. You can also clear out the whole calculator. I'm trying to say if I want to do that now. I guess I'll do that now. Like at the end of a test, I'm going to have you, even as one of your test questions, clear out the memory. Okay, and that'll clear these lists as well. But I just wanted to show you how to do this quickly this way. To clear the whole memory, it's right here. Okay, so second plus, reset. So go to 7. Don't go into here, go over to all on the right. And then enter for all memory. And then it's making sure you want to do this. Just go hit number 2 for yes, for resetting all the stuff. And then memory's all cleared. So now your window is going to go back to normal. Even if your window is off somehow, it's going to go to your standard window. Your y equals, this is all going to be cleared out. Your stat, if you go stat enter, your lists are going to be emptied out. Okay, so everything's back to just like easy stuff to start from. So this is where I want to be. Let's input like shoe size versus your height in centimeters. So I'll give you like 6 points here. So 6, 7.5, these are shoe sizes. See if we can predict your height if you know your shoe size. 8, 8.5, 10, and 11. And for the other ones, for your size 6 shoe size, this person was 150 centimeters tall. The next person who had a size 7.5 was maybe 160 centimeters tall. 163, 162, 173, and 175. Okay. Now, it's good to be able to know how to do this, the checksum. Like if this is a short list, and you can really check easily if you're doing this alongside of me right now with the graphing calculator, you could easily check to see if you screwed up or not. But you could do the checksum thing. One way to do that is go into stat right away, calculate, and instead of 1 var stats, go ahead and do the 2 var stats. Now this is stuff we're going to use later on with correlation coefficient and stuff, but right now I'm sorry, not correlation, but standard deviation. Hit enter right there, and this gives us a lot of information that you don't know what all this means, but we can use the checksum right here. So my X column is 51, and if you scroll down, right here, the summation of the column of the Y's is 983. So like, you know how the book and the homework gives you checksum, this is where you can find it. And again, to do that, it was under stat, calculate, and then I would do number 2 for 2 variable stats. And that's where you can find it. And looking for that checksum right there. All right, now that we have our columns in there, I want to scatter plot. Let's just make the scatter plot, I guess. All right, so let's graph them. So if I go to, what I want you to do is use this stat plot, even though you can go to y equals and go up here and turn your plots on and off. It's a good habit to use second y equals, which is stat plot, which is this screen, because then you can manipulate your list 1 versus list 2, list 1 versus list 3, which we're going to do in a minute with scatter plot. I'm sorry, with residuals. Our scatter plot's just list 1 and list 2, so it's already like a default for plot 1. So we want to turn any of these on basically, but plot 1 because it's list 1 and list 2. So I'm going to turn that on. So I'm going to go into it and then turn it on right there. So hit enter again, and now it's on. Now maybe you don't want these little squares. Maybe you want plus signs. You can change it down there. You can scroll down and change them to plus signs or dots or whatever. Okay, now double check. It's list 1 and list 2. So when I graph this, it's going to graph the points on this thing. Now, obviously, it's not going to be on the screen because our values were up in the 100, like 175. So I'm going to change this window so it fits the data. My smallest shoe size was 6 and my largest was 11, so I don't really need the negatives. I'm just going to leave it so I can see. Maybe I'll go -2. And then my max 10, I need to go up to at least 11, so I'll make it like 15. And then my minimums and maximums for Y. Well, since it's going to go so large, you can see what's happening to my window already. Since I'm going so large into the hundreds, I'm going to leave this space here underneath. It's going to look a lot smaller when I zoom out. But my max, I do need to change for sure to be above 175. So maybe just go to 180 or 185 or something. I'll change it to 185. Now when I graph it, hopefully those dots will be on there. So there they are. And they're pretty much lined up. Okay, so it's a good linear, you can see what's going on. I left my axes on here. Now there's a double line there, but with that scale being off, so I could change, I'm sorry, window. I could change that scale for the Y values because it's way up at 185. I could change that to go by tens or something just to get rid of the double line. Because it bugs me. But I left, it looks like normal up on the Y-axis. I left the axes there just so you can kind of get an idea of where stuff is. I could zoom in and get this much bigger. Now let's draw a line through there. Okay, so let's go to figure out our residual line. So let's go calculate our line best fit, which is our least squares regression line. So stat calculate. Now this is the other kind of calculate from the intersection that we used before. So stat calculate, so go over to the right. And then you can either use number 4 or number 8. 4 is what we're kind of used to with a y equals mx plus b form. Number 8 we're going to use though, and the book uses just to kind of get you in the mindset of future math courses where statistics they use the intercept first and then plus bx. So I'm not going to scroll down to number 8, but that's what it looks like. It looks like right there, a plus bx. Okay. Now if I enter, I get my equation. Okay. Now what it's not given me is the correlation, which should be underneath this, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. Okay. But at this point we have our y-intercept is a, so it's crosses way up high at about 121, which doesn't make sense in the real world because that would mean if you had a size 0 shoe, you'd be 121 centimeters tall. So a lot of this extrapolation doesn't make any sense, but the line itself does make sense within the context of our points or the confines of our points. The b is our slope in this case because it's in front of the x. So for so there's our 5.0 basically is our slope. So we can graph that. If I just hit graph, it's not going to be there because it's not under y equals. So I'm going to it's basically copying and pasting this stuff. And there's other ways to do this, but this is one way that's kind of easy to memorize. Just go to the y equals thing and paste it in there. Now, how am I going to paste that? I'm going to use my vars key, and I think it's 5. for statistics. So I hit vars 5, and then equation is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go over to the right, and there's my regression equation right there, and hit enter. Just something, if you do this more than a couple times, you just get used to seeing that. You can already see it graphed it for me. When I go to my graph, it'll put the line right through the middle of those. All right, so there's my line. And you can see it's pretty much lined up. So my correlation should be high if I want to figure out my R. I think I'll do that next. Let me see what else, make sure I'm not missing it. So we just graphed it. We found the equation for it. We graphed it. Now find R and R squared, and what do they mean? So here I give you the hint. Diagnostics need to be turned on. Okay, so let's go back to here. To figure out R, because if I go stat calculate, which is what I want to do, 8, it should give me R right here, and R squared. It's not. So, oh shoot, I didn't turn my diagnostics on. So go to second catalog right there. Second 0 basically, which is and go down to diagnostics. Now you can scroll down like this, but it'll take forever. Already the alpha key is on up here. So just hit D for diagnostic right here. So hit the X inverse key, which will give you the D, and that'll bring it right down to the D's at least. So it gets you there a lot quicker. Scroll down to diagnostics. One will say off, one will say on. Let's go to the on, and just hit enter twice. So it says done. Now the diagnostics are on. And then go ahead and do the calculate that line of regression again. So 8. And when I hit enter there, there's my R and my R squared. Okay, so what does this stuff mean? All right, R is a value, and this is something we discussed in class, but you'd like this to be close to 1, which it is. 0.98 is very close to 1. The highest it'll be is 1. If it is actually 1, all the points are lined up exactly. So if in this particular situation, if all these points lined up perfectly, that would mean you could predict someone's height based on their shoe size, which doesn't make sense. But it's still pretty strong in this particular case. The smallest, or not smallest, but you could also do negative. If the line went down to the right, you'd want a -1 to be a strong correlation. Okay. But if it's less than that, if it's like 0.4 or 0.3 or 0.2, something small here for the R's, then it's not a very good, this line isn't a very good estimate of what's going on. They don't relate to each other very well. Okay. So it's kind of like saying your height versus your test scores. They really have nothing to do with each other. So that would be an R of 0 probably, which is as small as it gets. Now R squared in context is something that means something in the real world. If you square 0.98, you get 0.967, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is the number that's kind of important in this case. This means that 97%, if I roughly round this to a decimal, to a percentage, 97% of the variability in your height can be basically influenced by your shoe size or predicted by your shoe size. Okay, so that's a lot of influence there. The rest, the other 3% basically, is genetics and whatever. Maybe there's big feet running your family or something based on your height. All that stuff, nutrition and whatever. So that's R and R squared, and residual stuff and residual plot. Okay, let's go back to the calculator and figure out our residuals. So I'm kind of backtracking here, but that's okay. Go to your list. Where I'm gonna go? Where's my list? Stat edit, and there's my lists. Now I would like to make a third list and throw my residuals in there. Okay, so like how far away is this ordered pair from the line of least squares regression, the line best fit, and how far is each of these points above or below that line? We can figure that out right here and throw them in a third column, and then we can graph that. Okay, so if I go over to L3, okay, and then just go up to the L3, but don't hit enter, just leave it there like it's waiting for me to input something right here, okay, on the bottom. And then go to, let me think for a second. I'm losing my mind here. That's something different I wanted to do. I know where it is. It's under list right here. Okay, go back to the list, the stat thing. So go stat, edit, Make sure we're up above there. Now go to the list. It's above the stat key. So second stat, and down here, number 7 is the residual. Now, if it's not there, scroll down. It's probably down below somewhere, but it should be there. Now, there it is. In my list 3, I'm going to have the residuals from these first 2 lists. Boom, right there. So if I hit enter, it still does them all right there. I could do it point by point, but just a lot quicker to go up to L3 and have them do it all at once. So those are my residuals. Now, if I want to make a residual plot like the book has in their homework all the time, I would just graph the X compared to L3. Instead of doing scatter plot, 1 versus 2, X versus Y, I'm doing 1 versus 3, which is X versus the residuals. Okay, so that's where we go to our stat plot again. So Y, second Y equals. Right now we have our plot 1 on. Let's turn that off. So go into it, hit enter, and then go over and hit off. So enter again. Maybe I'll clear this out so you can see this again. So I'm going to go second plot. So I'm in here. I'm going to go enter, and then here it was on. Oops, let's go back up. It was on here. I would go over to off and then hit enter. Now it's off. Go back. Oh, I really don't have to do this. I'll show you why. I can just go. I'll go back into it. At this point here, you can just go up to the plot 1 up here and go over to plot 2, and then hit enter, and then now you're in the plot 2 area instead of going second Y equals. Either way, and then go down to 2 to get to the same spot. Either way, so we want these to be on. So I'm going to go plot 2 on, but notice it's still list 1 and list 2, so nothing's different. So I want to change the Y list to L3. So go down there, go down to the L, and then just use your alpha key, and I'm sorry, your second key, and L3 is right here above the 3. So second 3. Okay, and that changes that to L3 now. So now it's going to graph L1 versus L3, which is our residual plot. And just for fun, let's make those plus signs. So let's go down here, over, enter. So now that's highlighted. So now if I hit graph, now my window is going to be off probably. Okay, so my residual plots are way down here. So I'm going to make my standard window. I can clear that out of there if I want, because there's that equation right there. Clear it out because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to go zoom 6. Okay, and there's my residual. Now I want to go off to the right a little bit. So just to keep it the same as the book, like it never really has this left side. So I'll go window. Where's my window? I'm going to make my negative, just make it go to like -1 or something. And then my max has to go above the 10. So because it was off the screen, let's go to like 15 and see what happens. They're there. So there's your typical looking residual plot. Now they're pretty scattered, aren't they? They're kind of random. You want this one to be a horizontal line going right through the middle of randomness. And if that's the case, that means it's a very good line. Your R is going to be high, your R squared is going to be high if these residuals are random. If they're curved somehow like a parabola, then you know you should have a curve best fit, not a line best fit. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. You might want to go back and redo the same problem again and pause and see if you can do it before I explain how to do it. How much time is this? 23 minutes. That's a pretty long video. So I'm going to stop here. I was going to say I could just add a question on and have you try it and then check it, but this video has been long enough. All right, thanks. Good luck.